Jamaica just got slapped with a 10% tariff by Donald Trump, and no one is talking about the real reason why. But trust me, when you find out, you're gonna be shocked. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how Trump's 10% tariff is about to shake up Jamaica's economy, trigger a Caribbean-wide backlash, and potentially set off a global trade war. But here's the kicker. This is all happening because of a little-known policy that Jamaica already has in place. Buckle up, because this one is about to get heated. The big bombshell, Trump's tariff war, begins. Alright, let's break it down. Donald Trump, the former and now present US president, famous for his America First policies, just pulled the trigger on a new 10% universal tariff on all imports into the United States. And guess what? Jamaica, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, St. Kitts, and Antigua, basically the whole Caribbean trade gang, just got hit hard. And it doesn't stop there. China, the EU, Taiwan, and Vietnam, they're taking even bigger hits, with tariffs climbing up to 49%. Now, according to Trump, this is all about fighting unfair global trade practices and reviving American manufacturing. But let's be real, this move is about flexing power and playing political chess on the world stage. Keynote and pay attention to that. What's really behind this tariff war, and how did Jamaica unknowingly provoke the US? Stick around, we're about to expose the full story, the hidden truth, Jamaica's role in the trade battle. Here's the twist most people don't know. Jamaica already has a 10% duty on US imports. That means, in Trump's mind, he's just matching energy, slapping Jamaica with an equal tariff. But is it really that simple? Experts like Dr. Damian King from Capri are now warning that this move could trigger a global recession. And it's not just about Jamaica. This could disrupt entire Caribbean economies. Think about it. Jamaican exports like rum, coffee, bauxite, and fresh produce are about to get a whole lot more expensive in the US. And guess who's paying the price? Not the Jamaican government, not the manufacturers, but the regular everyday consumer in America. And it gets worse. Trump claims these tariffs will protect American jobs and prevent illegal immigrants and drugs from flooding the US. Yes, you heard that right. Somehow, in Trump's world, putting a tax on Blue Mountain coffee is stopping the drug trade. Make it make sense. Like, what? Expert warns Trump tariff could trigger global recession. Executive Director at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, Capri, Dr. Damian King, is warning that the sweeping tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump could trigger a global recession. Meanwhile, Dr. King is dismissing President Trump's assertion that a universal tariff increase will benefit the US economy. So let's hear what Dr. King has to say on this specific matter.
Tariffs are not paid for by foreign countries. Tariffs are paid for by the consumer in the country that's doing the importing. So that's going to come as a shock to him. The second myth is that he thinks that tariffs attract investment. No, what tariffs do is it shifts investment from where the country has a comparative advantage to where it is less efficient. So it doesn't net increase foreign investment. And the third myth is that low tariffs are a favor that you do to other countries that then take advantage of you by sending goods to you. And again, that is also not correct. Low tariffs are a way for the country, the domestic country, to take advantage of other countries' natural advantages. This step in deglobalization is going to lead to a global recession. Then the US is going to contract the most, but other countries are going to contract as well. And it means that they are going to be buying less of all of our exports, no matter where they are going. So let's take, for example, his tariffs on cars and his overall tariffs. What Trump wants to do is to move manufacturing back to the US. But the reason why manufacturing left the US in the first place is because the US is not an efficient place. It is not a low-cost place to do manufacturing because wages are high. Because people in the US, they are higher skilled and they can create greater value added by applying their skill to more value added parts of the production process. So the lower value added part, which is putting the things together, the manufacturing, moves somewhere else. By forcing that manufacturing back into the US, manufacturing is now going to be produced at a higher cost in the US. And so therefore, resources are going to move from higher value added parts of the supply chain to lower value added parts, which is screwing things together. Anybody can screw things together. That don't take high skill. Global trade is based on the idea that goods are generally produced where they use up the fewest resources, so they are cheapest to produce. And if everybody participates in that, then global production is most efficient and therefore the most output from the world's resources. So when you start to put barriers in place to make it not possible to take advantage of that, then what is going to happen is global trade is going to diminish and therefore global productivity is going to diminish. So the world is going to have a smaller output of goods and services to divide amongst itself. So we are going to see a global recession. We're certainly going to see a recession in the US, and we are going to see a global recession, and that means, a small open economy like Jamaica is going to feel the consequences of that, regardless of whether we get 10% more tariffs or not.
Enter social and political commentator Dr. Karen Dunkley says the universal tariffs may erode profit margins for local manufacturers and businesses. Dr. Karen Dunkley, let's hear what she has to say in her own words.
When you think about the industries or banana or manufactured goods or bauxite or alumina, we have to begin to think about what is going to happen. Will it impact demand? Will higher prices now make our products obviously less attractive to U.S. buyers? And then we have to think about the profit margin erosion. You would be amazed how many people and persons in America, they are actually in favor of the tariff because they're saying that it's about time to buy American and to focus on Americans, and that we should absorb the shocks of the tariffs as the exporter. So that is going to dip into profit margin or will lead to profit margin erosion and just sector instability. So we have every reason to be concerned.
What happens next? So what now? Will Jamaica retaliate with an even higher tariff on American goods? Will CARICOM step in and negotiate? Or is this just the beginning of a full-blown trade war between the Caribbean and the US? Well, here's what we know. Prices for Jamaican goods in the US will rise, meaning fewer sales. Jamaican exporters will have to find new markets or absorb losses. American businesses that rely on Caribbean imports will feel the squeeze. And if other countries retaliate against the US, we could be looking at a domino effect leading straight into a global economic slowdown. In other words, a global recession. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, economists are predicting inflation to skyrocket. So if you thought groceries were expensive now, just wait. Will this tariff war crush Jamaica's economy or force a new trade alliance? We'll be watching closely. Jamaica is now caught in the crossfire of Trump's trade war, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Will our leaders take a stand, or will we just have to ride out the storm? One thing's for sure and two things are for certain. This is far from over. If you want to stay ahead of the political drama, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. Do you think Jamaica should hit back with its own tariffs? And don't forget to check out our other videos where we even dive deeper into Trump's global trade war and how it could change Jamaica's economy forever. See you there. Here's a summary of the highlights and the key points. Trump imposes a 10% universal tariff affecting Jamaican exports. Jamaica already has a 10% duty on US imports, triggering Trump's retaliation. The tariff will increase prices on Jamaican goods in the US market. Economic experts warn this could trigger a global recession. The Caribbean is facing potential economic fallout. Will Jamaica fight back, or will this escalate into a full-scale trade war? How Trump's 10% tariff will devastate Jamaica and the Caribbean. Trump's universal 10% tariff on imports is not just another trade policy. This could wreck the Caribbean economy in multiple ways. Here's how. 1. Jamaican exports will get more expensive. Fewer sales equal major economic losses. Jamaican products like rum, coffee, bauxite, and seafood will become 10% more expensive for US buyers. This means fewer American businesses will buy Jamaican goods. Result: Jamaican manufacturers and farmers lose millions in revenue. Example: Jamaica exported $607 million worth of goods to the US in 2023. A 10% tariff could mean a loss of over $60 million US dollars. Get it? That's how serious this situation actually is. 2. Job losses and business closures in Jamaica. If Jamaican exports drop, factories, farms, and businesses will be forced to cut jobs. Unemployment could skyrocket, leading to more poverty and economic instability. Biggest risk: bauxite and alumina exports, which make up nearly 50% of Jamaica's export earnings, will be hit hard. If US buyers switch to cheaper alternatives, Jamaica's mining sector could collapse. 3. Higher prices for Jamaicans. Inflation nightmare. The US might retaliate by cutting exports to Jamaica or raising prices on essentials like wheat, oil, and machinery. This would drive up the cost of living in Jamaica, making food, fuel, and transportation even more expensive. Worst case scenario: inflation could spiral out of control, pushing thousands of Jamaicans into financial crisis. 4. A Caribbean-wide economic disaster. Other Caribbean countries like Trinidad, Barbados, St. Lucia, and Grenada will also suffer from reduced exports. Tourism could take a hit if economic conditions worsen. Fewer Americans may travel to the Caribbean, reducing tourism revenue. Fact: the US is the Caribbean's biggest trade partner. Any disruption could crush entire economies. 5. This could spark a trade war. If Caribbean nations retaliate by imposing tariffs on US goods, this could escalate into a full-blown trade war. Example: Jamaica could slap higher taxes on US imports like cars, electronics, and processed foods, hurting American businesses in return. The big risk: the IMF and World Bank could downgrade Jamaica's economic outlook, making it harder for the country to secure international loans. Lucky thing we have China. So to hell with the World Bank and the IMF. Middle finger to them. The final verdict: this is an economic time bomb. Jamaica and the Caribbean cannot afford this tariff. The impact could be severe, long-term, and potentially catastrophic. Jobs will be lost, businesses will suffer, and the cost of living will skyrocket. Question for you: should Jamaica fight back with its own tariffs or try to negotiate with the US? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Trump's tariffs could devastate Jamaica's economy, trigger job losses, drive up inflation, and possibly spark a Caribbean-wide financial crisis. Now enter President Donald Trump. According to President Trump, the tariff is in retaliation for the 10% tariff now charged by Jamaica on U.S. imports. So let's hear what President Trump has to say.
We will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%, and that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. I campaigned on this policy throughout last year, and today that promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you got ripped off with your salaries. My auto worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything. But now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of the European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff.
Now, let's break down things even further and put things into a different perspective. You see, Jamaica putting a 10% duty on all import goods from the United States never hurted or damaged the American economy in no way, shape, or form. Jamaica is a small, developing, poor third world nation, just like the rest of the Caribbean islands. So Trump, with his 10% reciprocal tariffs on the Caribbean islands that are in the Americas, only further shows that America does not care about the Caribbean islands in no way, shape, or form. Hence, the reason why each time them do something like this, they push us further away and push us towards BRICS and China. Trump and America should never put a reciprocal 10% tariff on Caribbean islands because we cannot afford it. So this could actually push the world into a global recession. And America don't care one bit. You know why? Because it is a planned and deliberate event. Trump is rebuilding back America's economy. He is going to make America's economy stronger, greater, and better. So if we end up into a recession, America will come out stronger and better when all of the dust is settled, when all of the smoke clears, while everyone else is left in ruin. This is why you need to even decentralize the US dollar. And by that I mean de-dollarize the US dollar. It gives America too much global power and influence on other people's economy. This is why we see BRICS are taking the necessary steps to stop using the US dollar and create their own currency within BRICS nations to use for trading. Any little fluctuation in America with their dollar, it causes instant inflation in countries like Jamaica. That's why when you go to the supermarket, you see the prices increase overnight. That's inflation. That's what happens when you depend and rely on the US dollar as your trading currency. The world's reserved currency is the US dollar, and it needs to be de-dollarized. And that's my assessment. That's my opinion. There's a why behind all of this. Always ask yourself, why is Trump doing this? The why is very important. Trump is doing what is best for his economy and his people. And in Trump's mind and his assessment, doing something like this will put the American economy back on top. Yes, that's the why. That's the reason why he's doing this. In order to achieve peace, you have to go through war. So the global devastation might be catastrophic to many countries like Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean islands, but Trump does not care about that. America first policy. He's doing what's best for America, and you cannot blame him. You cannot take up any issues with that. Our mistake is relying on depending too much on the US and the US dollar. You cannot have a country like Jamaica with an economy that is built like a house of cards, built on a foundation of sand that only depends on tourism for its major source of foreign exchange. What happens when less tourists start coming to Jamaica? What happens to your house of cards economy? It will fall apart. That's why being very self-reliant as it relates to agriculture, first things first, you must be able to feed yourself. So if there is ever an apocalyptic situation on the planet, at least be able to feed yourself if you stop receive imported food products from other countries. At least be able to feed yourself successfully. Those are the type of mindset that the Jamaican and Caribbean leaders should be thinking about. Some people think this tariff is just the beginning of something much bigger. Do you agree? What's really going on here? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Trump imposes 10% tariff on Jamaican exports. How will Jamaica and the Caribbean survive?